So this is a shot that probably won Mickelson. Oh, that's not very good. That won Mickelson. Why he was probably a great bet. I guess that's one of the things that the odds myth is, that this was a huge advantage for Mickelson around Kiawah Island, because around Kiawah it's classic Pete Dye. He loves these like upturned greens where, you know, you can hit the green but the ball can easily run off to the side. It's weird because I've played quite a lot of his courses where he's designed them like that, especially in Carolina. And guys who do well on those courses are people who can really control the spin on their approach shots. I've got a mate called Bob McClure who plays at Chichesi Creek Golf Club, I think it's called. And he's just brilliant round there because he just bats it forwards with not too much spin, and so he can kind of run it up the hills at the front of the green, stuff like that. I can't do it. I really struggle. Even when I hit a low one, it's got a lot of spin on it. So for me, I have to really try and just control spin and control distance. But the point is, you always end up with these shots where you're down a hill, you've got the flag above you, the greens are quite firm. And they're really difficult shots. And the way the turf is on a lot of these courses, it's not like on a links course, I can just like bang these into the hill with a 7-iron and run them up. But it's quite difficult to do it on these courses because the turf is kind of sticky. The roots are quite close to the surface and it's spongy, pretty unpredictable. I mean, I've tried to bump shots on these courses where it just hits and stops, so you can't really do it. So Mickelson is the master of this stuff, and one of the things, it's another one of these sort of things in golf where people talk about these buzzwords, and I feel like sometimes people don't fully understand the meaning. So a lot of people, especially on tour, will talk about using the bounce of the club, but I think people would be much better off understanding what that actually means and understanding how you can build a spectrum of ways of hitting shots. And work within that spectrum. So what really happens is that if you think about when you see a great player hit an iron shot and you get that like lovely compressed noise, there's a couple of moments in the golf swing that great players are good at using, and the idea of deceleration is really not very well understood. So there's a deceleration after somebody's kind of opened up their body and created all this load on the club. Is actually the deceleration of the left side stopping that really creates the acceleration in the club going through impact. I think a lot of time people think that, there's this idea, I think Tiger Woods thinks this, to be honest with you, is that you get to here and they go, oh, clear the hips, and you just go this way as fast as possible, and that somehow creates a great swing and loads of speed through impact, and it really doesn't, and it also doesn't really create a great strike. But the other bit of deceleration that occurs with a well-struck iron shot is where the club's coming in and the hands are leading, and again, with the hands leading, it's absolutely key not to be leaning. So the hands are leading the way, and what happens is that as you come into impact, the leading edge hits the ground, and the deceleration of the leading edge hitting the ground creates this little bit of acceleration into the centre of gravity of the club, which kind of is the thing that fires the ball forward. So think of when a great player hits an iron shot in the wind or whatever, it's really that feeling like they've compressed the ball, but what's doing it is the leading edge hitting the ground and firing it forward. So it's just sending the centre of gravity over the ball more as the leading edge hits the ground, so it accentuates. So the hands are coming in ahead, but then when the leading edge hits the ground, they almost go a bit more ahead and create that firing of the ball forward. And so ultimately what I'm saying is that if you put the leading edge into the ground, that is shooting the ball forwards. And so quite often what you might see is, I get this quite a lot, I tend to really struggle to play shots the other way, but quite often what you might see is if somebody wants to hit one of these shots at a certain speed, and the leading edge goes in, that's going to shoot the ball forwards and they're always going to hit it too far. What you'll probably see is that if the speed on that particular shot might not be that different to the next one that I'm going to hit. So you've got the extreme of leading edge hitting ground and shooting ball forwards. The reason that people talk about using the bounce as much as anything, a lot of people talk about it as a way that it's much easier to hit these shots, which might be true. But the other reason that you would use the bounce is because you take out, by using the bounce, you take out the deceleration that sends the centre of gravity forwards. Because what happens is the club literally has no friction under the ball, or very little, a lot less, I say none. It has very little friction under the ball. And so what happens is the club just kind of whizzes under the ball, it doesn't grab and it doesn't send the ball forwards, which means the ball can really zip up the face, and that's what creates that nice soft landing shot and the shot that we see Mickelson hit. And there's a few ways. That was a good one. So if you were to look at that one, if we had that one on a high-speed camera through impact or whatever, what you'd see is the club kind of buzzing under the ball, and it would be fairly uninterrupted. You know, you wouldn't see it shoot forward, you wouldn't see anything. It would just buzz under the ball, and the ball would go up the face. And the other thing that you might notice, if you really look closely, is that a lot of players, especially on the PGA Tour, will use a certain type of wedge that really works on these kind of lies and on these type of courses. And basically what it is a wedge with a sole with a lot of width and a lot of camber. A lot of people only want to talk about bounce, and bounce is, the equipment companies generally speaking, what they'll do is they'll try and simplify things. They prefer to have like a linear, one-dimensional message than they would a message which is a bit more nuanced than that, and it's always more nuanced than that. And it's one of the main reasons why within all this progress we're actually going backwards with equipment and knowledge in golf. And essentially, it's not with these type of lies and these type of grasses. It's much less about bounce and much more about shape. So imagine a wedge sole which is wide with a lot of camber, okay, and a lot of sole. That what they're trying to do is get a wedge which creates very little grab into the turf, and that's about the shape of the sole as much as it is the bounce, and probably more than the bounce. So you see a lot of players using, Vokey calls it a K grind. There's nothing new about it, he didn't make it up, this is all the sort of old knowledge that's been in golf for years and years. A lot of players will be using that kind of K grind type thing, really wide, really rounded. And then if you see them play links courses, a lot of times they might want something slightly different, which is a lot less camber, maybe more of a C type grind where you see the heel and the toe taken away. We'll do something else on wedge grinds later on, but those type of big rounded grinds are kind of a bit of a cheat when it comes to hitting these shots. And you've probably seen the PM grind on the Callaway wedge. But ultimately, what we all have to understand is that it's being able to hit these shots around the greens is actually about creating less friction under the ball at impact. So if you can just get that feeling that whatever you need to do with the club, to get the club just buzzing underneath the ball, didn't register that one, and it also creates a lot of spin. Because the club doesn't really lose any speed. It doesn't get this thing where it hits the ground and it de-lofts over the ball, which we want on an iron shot. It's attractive on an iron shot, but not so much on a chip. So that's leading edge going in, and that really sends the ball forwards. You know, if I use the leading edge on this shot, I actually really can't get anywhere near that flag, unless I'm very lucky, because I've got to land it over the hill. That's about as good as I could do. Yeah, so that landed just short. Oh, that hit the flag, so that's actually the best one I've hit. But really, what Mickelson's so good at is forward in the stance. There's no friction at all under the ball. And if you understand that, in my opinion, if you can understand the way it really works, i.e. you can get a visual in your head of what the club needs to do, you're much better off than just trying to go through this paint by numbers thing of somebody telling you, get it in these positions, use the bounce like it's a buzzword. You don't own the skill when it's that. If you get an idea in your head, first of all, of what the club needs to do, then you can own the skill and you can build your technique around it. But you've got to have a knowledge of the task at hand rather than just, you know, a load of buzzwords and some silly YouTube video talking about using the bounce. So I'll just pull out a couple of wedges here, which are good examples of the type of grinds that work well on that Kiawah type turf. Probably these two are the best examples. I've got an old Dom White somewhere, which is like a mad round. I don't think it's got a shaft in it, so it's probably just sat in the drawer somewhere. But this is a good example, maybe. So these are all wedges with quite wide soles, with a lot of camber. This is the old 8 elk one designed by Larry Bobker. The other two are both Don White grinds. They're wide and they've got a lot of camber. These are very hard wedges. You know, if you want to hit that wedge shot that a lot of people, you know, that pitch shot where you really want to compress the ball and kind of shoot the ball forwards and check it up, it's very difficult to hit that shot with these type of wedges, because they're not going to these are designed to not grab the turf, just to buzz through the turf. But like I say, that is about camber and shape. It's not actually about bounce. Bounce is just quite an easy message to get across because it's just a number that people can buy into. And it's one of the things that gets missed. If I was playing a links course, I probably want to be on something a bit more like that. A lot less camber. You see the back edge is taken off, because that turf, it doesn't grab anyway. The ball just skims through it, so you don't really need that type of wedge.